Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into the fascinating currents of knowledge, bringing you the essential insights you need to be truly well-informed. Think about this. Before the internet as we know it, before Facebook, before Twitter, there was this hidden world, a network of digital communities.
Right, not built by big corporations, but by regular people, enthusiasts connecting with, like, a single phone line, a computer, and this shared passion, almost an obsession sometimes.
Exactly. And what started out as this quest for knowledge, maybe a bit of respect among peers, it evolved into something, well, way more complex, and it actually shaped the digital world we live in today in ways most of us probably don't even realize.
It really did. It's foundational stuff.
So today, we're taking that deep dive. We're looking into the origins, the evolution of the hacker underground. It's quite a journey, starting from what felt like these innocent digital corner pubs all the way to, sophisticated cyber warfare.
We'll explore what drove these early folks, the initial motivations, and then the turning points, the things that really pushed this whole scene underground.
And the personal stories, too. Some of them are pretty intense. People living on this electronic frontier, facing consequences that honestly still echo today.
Yeah, and for this dive, we're relying on some really compelling material. We're drawing heavily from excerpts from The Hacker Underground, Evolution, Motives, and Justice. That's the book by Solette Dreyfus and Julian Assange.
Right. It gives this unparalleled look inside the minds, the experiences of these pioneers. It's a window into a world that was, well, foundational, but also incredibly unpredictable.
And importantly, documented by people who really understood the inner workings.
So our mission today is pretty clear. We want to unpack the culture, that vibrant early digital community feel, trace how things shifted from, say, pure intellectual curiosity towards more illicit stuff.
And also understand the impact, right? The long-lasting effects this had on law enforcement, how the media portrayed it all, and even the basics of cybersecurity as we understand it now.
Yeah, get ready for some surprising facts, maybe a few aha moments along the way. We hope it gives you a fresh perspective on where the internet really came from.
The Golden Age, a digital corner pub.
Okay, so building on that idea of grassroots community, let's get into the nuts and bolts. How did these digital hangouts actually work? What made them special? We're talking about bulletin board systems, right? BBSAS.
Exactly. BBSAS. For anyone who remembers that era, or even if you don't, these were the bedrocks. Not just precursors to social media, they were the social hubs back then, often run literally out of someone's bedroom or basement.
So not exactly Google's server farms.
Not even close. Think really basic. Often it was just like a souped-up Apple II computer, a single modem, and a lone telephone line. That's it. One person connects at a time.
Wow, one line.
One line. But despite that simplicity, they were incredibly important. They were these social hubs where individuals shared information, ideas, and even formed friendships. It wasn't just about data transfer.
There's connection.
Absolutely.
Right.
Building a shared space. You might have people geographically miles apart, finally finding others with the same niche interests. And the variety was amazing. You'd find discussions about, the latest Commodore or Amiga.
The classic computer rivalries.
Oh, yeah. But also really personal stuff. Like there was a Lonely Hearts group for teenagers trying to figure things out. Or fan groups, like for the Blues Brothers movie. People connecting over shared passions.
So it wasn't just tech talk. It was life happening online, even back then.
Totally. It shows that need for digital community is as old as having a modem, basically.
And this grassroots thing really took off. Interestingly, the sources point to Melbourne, Australia as a major hub. Why Melbourne? Was it something in the water? Or maybe something not in the water?
Well, the sources offer a couple of interesting theories. On one hand, Melbourne had this history as an intellectual center, so maybe a natural curiosity, a tendency towards experimentation.
Makes sense.
But then there's the other, slightly funnier theory, the dreary beaches and often miserable weather.
Seriously, the weather made them hackers.
Well, the idea is, if it's miserable outside, you stay inside, right? More time indoors might mean more time tinkering with computers, exploring these BBSs. It paints this picture of dedicated, maybe slightly pale, early adopters finding their tribe online.
So a mix of brain power and bad weather. A uniquely Melbourne origin story.
Could be. It created this focal point, this concentration of activity.
And this dedication, this intellectual drive, it created a very specific culture, didn't it? Almost like a code of honor. The sources say the main currency wasn't money.
Not at all, especially in the early days. It was about respect and to buy a thrill. That was the core motivation, the challenge of figuring out complex systems, the excitement of exploring where you weren't supposed to go.
And getting props from your peers for it.
Exactly. Peer recognition within that tight-knit group was huge. It set the tone. It was about knowledge, mastery, ingenuity, much more than getting rich quick.
Which makes these golden rules they had even more fascinating. These weren't just suggestions, right?
No, they were pretty explicit guidelines, certainly within the early Australian scene. Things like, don't damage computer systems you break into. That includes not crashing them.
Okay, so don't be destructive.
Right. Also, don't change the information in those systems. The exception being, covering your tracks by altering logs.
Ah, the classic log edit.
A necessary skill back then. And crucially, share information. That was fundamental. Share knowledge, share techniques.
And the overall idea.
The mantra was simple. Leave it as you find it. Like a digital version of the camper's code, it shows this initial ethical framework, a kind of respect for the systems they were exploring.
Almost like digital explorers rather than vandals, at least initially.
For many, yes. It was about curiosity and learning, not malice.
It's pretty amazing to think about this ethical code emerging organically in this new, unregulated space. Can you give us some examples of this in practice? People who really lived by these rules?
Definitely. Look at someone like Bowen. He ran the Pacific Island and Zen BBSS. This wasn't some big company. It was his personal project.
Right, the guy with the Apple II earlier.
That's him. His Pacific Island BBS had a 20-megabyte hard drive. Sounds tiny now, but back then it was gargantuan for a personal computer. And it cost him around $5,000.
Wow, that's serious cash for the time.
Huge investment. And what did he do? He offered free computer accounts to everyone. He funded the whole thing by living at home with his parents.
Just to build the community.
Exactly, purely fostering that space. And these weren't just tech forums. We mentioned the Lonely Hearts group, the Blues Brothers fan clique that met up in real life, sometimes even in costume. It shows genuine social connection.
Extending beyond the screen.
Yeah. And you even saw some self-regulation. There was another BBS called The Real Connection. It used to host hackers, but later it went straight, closed down its hacking sections.
Why did they do that?
It suggests they saw the writing on the wall, an awareness that the legal landscape was shifting, maybe a desire to avoid trouble. Shows the community itself was grappling with these issues early on.
The loss of innocence into the underground.
But that relatively innocent phase, that golden age, it couldn't really last forever. The big change came with new computer crime laws and increasing police crackdowns.
The authorities started paying attention.
Big time. And that external pressure really changed the game. It forced the community more underground. That open, exploratory feeling started to fade. Things became more clandestine, more cautious.
When digital corner pubs started locking its doors.
Pretty much. It was a major turning point, fundamentally changing where things were headed.
So as the pressure mounted, what kind of darker elements started creeping in? How did things diverge from that original ethos of exploration and respect?
Well, this is where it gets complicated. Alongside the laws and crackdowns, you see the rise of carding, credit card fraud, basically.
Okay, that sounds different.
It was profoundly different. Carding marked this huge shift. It attracted a whole new type of person, individuals who, as the sources say, held little or no respect for the early Australian underground's golden rules of hacking.
So the motivation changed. It wasn't just about the thrill or respect anymore.
Exactly. Suddenly, it was about illegal financial gain. Stealing card numbers, using them. A clear move away from the more philosophical, exploratory stuff towards straight-up crime. Different people, different goals.
That's a really stark contrast.
Yeah.
How did the original hackers, the explorers, view this carding phenomenon? Did they see it as the same thing?
Oh, absolutely not. The sources make it clear. Carding was considered less noble than pure hacking. It took, and I love this quote, the technical skill of a wind-up toy compared to the brain power needed for real system exploration.
Okay, so not much respect there.
None at all. It was seen as low-level, crude, and just criminal. And this created a real split. You see characters like this guy, Blue Thunder. He was notorious.
What did he do?
Instead of sharing info, he'd trick other hackers, get them to log onto his BBS, secretly grab their passwords and valuable logins, steal their secrets, and then lock them out of their own accounts.
Wow, that's brutal. A total betrayal of the old ethos.
Completely. Personal gain through backstabbing. It shattered that early trust, that cooperative spirit.
So with the law cracking down and these internal divisions happening, how did the community physically or digitally adapt? The BBSs themselves must have changed.
They had to. That open door policy, gone. BBs started becoming invitation-only boards. You had to know someone, be vouched for.
More exclusive.
And even within those, you got these super secret inner sanctum sections. To get into those, you needed proof of hacking skill or information. You had to contribute something valuable, prove you were legit.
So layers of secrecy. From a town square to a fortress.
Exactly. Trust became everything. Vetting was essential. But it also meant information didn't flow as freely. It was a survival tactic, but it came at the cost of that open community feel.
And this must have had a huge psychological impact on people, too. All this secrecy, the fear of getting caught.
Oh, absolutely. A real sense of paranoia and isolation started to set in. People became wary. Many started working alone or only in very small, trusted groups. That broader community feeling started to erode.
You can really see this in some of the individual stories, like Par's.
Yeah, Parr's story is intense. He was on the run from the authorities, and the sources describe him as constantly watching over his shoulder. He was even spreading fake rumors about his whereabouts just to try and throw people off his trail.
Living in constant fear.
It wasn't just fear, it was this grinding psychological pressure. It changed how people lived, how they interacted. The joy of discovery got replaced by this constant anxiety of being discovered.
And even someone like Bowen, the guy who started those open BBSs, he had to change dramatically too, right? That really shows how much things shifted.
It really does. Bowen, the ultimate community builder, eventually embraced full anonymity. He actually invented the name Craig Bowen.
Why? What happened?
Because a young hacker, known only as Masked Avenger, somehow tracked him down and just showed up at his real house on his doorstep.
Whoa, that must have been terrifying.
A huge shock, a stark personal wake-up call about the dangers of being visible. The carefree days were gone. Anonymity wasn't just a preference anymore, it was about survival. A powerful lesson learned the hard way.
The Wankworm, a political statement that shook NASA.
Okay, so we've seen the internal shifts, the move underground, but sometimes these hacker activities broke out into the mainstream in a huge way. Let's talk about one of the most famous early examples, the Wankworm.
Ah, yes, WANK. Stands for Worms Against Nuclear Killers.
Not exactly subtle. This wasn't about stealing data or money, was it? This was political.
Purely political. And to really get the impact, you need the context. This happened right when NASA was gearing up for its big Galileo mission to Jupiter.
I remember that mission. It had some controversy, right?
Huge controversy. It's facing delays, but more importantly, there were massive public protests about its power source. It used plutonium.
Plutonium on a space probe.
Yeah, for its generators. And anti-nuclear activists were extremely worried. They feared what they called plutonium rain if the launch went wrong. So a very tense, politically charged atmosphere.
And that's when this worm appears on NASA systems.
Exactly. The digital world became the protest stage.
And the message itself was pretty shocking. What did NASA staff actually see when they logged in?
Imagine logging into your work computer, especially at NASA, managing a billion-dollar mission, and instead of the usual welcome screen, you get this. Worms Against Nuclear Killers. Your system has been officially wanked. Note the typo in against.
Officially wanked. Wow. And then
the message continues. You talk at times of peace for all, and then prepare for war. It was startling, accusatory, and the impact. Pure panic. Staff saw messages scrolling past like deleted file, deleted file. They thought their critical data was being wiped out in real time.
oh my God, so they thought everything was being destroyed?
They did. The agency actually lost control of its systems temporarily. It was chaos, operational paralysis, in a highly sensitive environment. A digital siege.
That initial chaos sounds massive. Did it spread beyond just that one part of NASA? How did they react institutionally?
Spread quite far. NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, JPL, in California, a huge facility, 6,500 employees, tied to Caltech, they took the drastic step of pulling themselves completely off the network, disconnecting entirely.
Just cut the cord.
Yep, deemed the risk too high. And it wasn't just NASA. The worm also hit the U.S. Department of Energy's HEPNet, their global high-energy physics network. So critical government research infrastructure was affected. The SPAN office managing NASA's network was swamped. Calls from like 25 different hysterical system administrators all at once.
A complete meltdown.
There's a massive wake-up call about how vulnerable these interconnected systems really were.
What's really fascinating is how the investigation uncovered these weird clues, like the worm being programmed not to attack computers in something called DC's Area 48. What was that about?
That detail was the key. Totally baffling at first.
Yeah.
The NASA team finds this weird exception. Don't attack Area 48. They look it up. Area 48 is New Zealand.
New Zealand. Why would a NASA worm care about New Zealand?
Exactly. They were just scratching their heads. It made no sense for a random attack. It screamed specific intent. And that's where the politics comes back in.
How so?
This connects directly to New Zealand's 1986 nuclear-free zone policy. They banned nuclear-powered or nuclear-armed ships. The U.S. retaliated pretty hard, suspended security ties, cut intelligence sharing.
Ah, so the worm not attacking New Zealand was a political statement supporting their anti-nuclear stance.
Precisely. It provided the why. It linked the worm directly to that real-world political dispute. It wasn't just random code. It was digital protest aligned with anti-nuclear sentiment, likely against U.S. policy.
So how did they actually trace it? This investigation sounds like early cyber forensics.
It really was pioneering stuff. Led
Yeah.
by Ron Tincotti at NASA Span Security, eventually brought in the FBI, a big early example of agencies working together on cybercrime. They painstakingly followed the trail.
And where did it lead?
Surprisingly, to a French development machine. That was the apparent ground zero. And adding another layer, Soulette Dreyfus, one of the book's authors, later found connections in the worm's code to lyrics by the Australian band Midnight Oil.
Midnight Oil. Seriously. So likely an Australian creator.
Strongly suggests it. Brings it right back to that Melbourne scene we talked about. Roots the worm not just in code, but in a specific cultural and political moment.
Okay, so despite all that panic, the worm wasn't actually deleting files. It was a prank.
Sort of. The good news for NASA was, yes, it was not actually deleting their files. It was just pretending. So technically, a big practical joke from the creator's view.
But not so funny for the people watching their files supposedly disappear.
Not funny at all. The sources say it caused headache and heartache, and occasionally a heart attack. The psychological impact, the operation disruption, immense, even if the core function wasn't malicious deletion.
But there is still a bad news element, right? Even as a prank, it posed risks.
Definitely. The bad news was significant. The worm was actively looking for privileged accounts, administrator access. If it found them, it could have paved the way for an even more serious break-in by someone else. It was essentially mapping the network for high-value targets.
So it could have been a reconnaissance tool for a worse attack?
Potentially. And interestingly, the worm itself wasn't perfectly coded. It was less infectious than its author appeared to desire. Key parts simply didn't work.
Suggesting it was rushed? Maybe unfinished?
Possibly, like someone was desperate to get the message out, even if the code wasn't perfect. Adds to the mystery.
This whole incident feels like more than just a historical anecdote. It showed how even these kinds of attacks could have global consequences. Did it lead to any lasting changes?
Absolutely critical changes. The wankworm was a direct catalyst for creating FIRST, the Forum of Incident Response and Security Teams.
FIRST, what's that?
It's an international security alliance. It allows governments, universities, companies, everyone to share information about security incidents, coordinate responses. Before WANK, there wasn't really a global framework for this.
So this practical joke basically forced the world to get serious about international cybersecurity cooperation.
In a big way. It proved the digital realm was a new front for political statements, far beyond picket signs, and it showed these threats crossed borders. WANK laid the groundwork for how we handle major cyber incidents today.
The human factor stories from the electronic frontier.
Let's shift focus now back to the people involved. These individual stories really bring this era to life. First up, let's meet Mendax. His main drive seemed to be earning respect within the hacker elite, the aristocracy of hackers as he saw it.
Right, and his big target, his proving ground, was Minerva, a powerful mainframe computer in Sydney. Cracking Minerva was like climbing Everest for hackers back then.
And his method wasn't just about code, was it? He was known for social engineering.
He was a master of it. Less about technical exploits, more about manipulating people. He'd use this deep, authoritative voice on the phone. He even had a pre-recorded tape of office hubbub playing in the background to sound legit.
Seriously, background noise.
Yep. And he registered a Sydney phone number that was always engaged, so if people tried to call back the fake number he gave, they couldn't get through. He'd pose as an official from OTC, the phone company.
And just ask for passwords?
Pretty much. Cajole them out of unsuspecting employees. There's this great story about a manager in Perth. He was worried about staff complaints, really fretting, and Mendax calls up, pretends to be helping, and the manager just gives him his password over the phone.
Wow. Exploiting trust and anxiety. The human factor is always the weak link.
Often is. Mendax proved that brilliantly.
And once someone like Mendax got into a system like Minerva, it wasn't just about bragging rights, right? These systems were valuable tools.
Hugely valuable. Beyond the status, Minerva was powerful. You could use its processing power to run network scanners programs that would search the network for other vulnerable computers.
Sure.
We're talking the X.25 network here.
Explain X.25 again, quickly.
Sure. Think of it as a precursor to the modern Internet's protocols. It was this packet-switched network, crucial for global data communication back then. Getting into Minerva meant you could use it as a launchpad to connect to other X.25 systems worldwide. Plus, it had programming tools.
So a powerful base camp for further exploration.
Exactly. Challenge plus utility.
And Mendax, working with an accomplice called Prime Suspect, they eventually achieved something even bigger, right? Something that really showed the kind of power hackers could potentially wield back then.
They really did. Their biggest coup was gaining root access to NIC, the Network Information Center.
Root access, that means.
Full administrative control, like having the master key to the entire building. And NIC was critical internet infrastructure. This gave them, and the source uses this phrase, phenomenal power on the internet.
Phenomenal how? What could they actually do?
Get this. With root on NIC, they could have, theoretically, made Australia disappear from the internet, just remove its presence. Or they could have redirected all of Australia's internet traffic to, say, Brazil.
That's terrifying, the potential for chaos.
It really highlights the intoxicating allure of that kind of control and the fragility of the early internet. Chilling, really.
Okay, let's move to another story, Par. His tale is full of high stakes, dramatic escapes, and a heavy personal cost. It started with another hacker, Force, and a massive data dump from Citibank.
Massive is right. Thousands and thousands of credit card numbers. Enough data to fuel a hacker's activities for a long, long time. But it also put a huge target on his back.
And Parr wrestled with the ethics of this, didn't he? Unlike the pure carders.
He did. He used the card data, but mostly for free connections to overseas computer systems. He justified it as hitting back at Telescom, as he called Telecom, the phone company he despised.
So free phone calls and system access, basically.
Yes, but he drew a line. He explicitly avoided real credit card fraud, buying goods, stealing money directly. He had his own code, even if it seems murky from the outside.
And his story gets really dramatic when law enforcement closes in.
Incredibly dramatic. There's this vivid scene where he's being chased by the U.S. Secret Service. He ends up swerving his four-wheel drive off the road into a lettuce field just to evade this white car that was tailing him.
Like something out of a movie. It shows the real-world danger he was in.
Absolutely. Far removed from just sitting at a keyboard.
And the psychological toll of being on the run, the paranoia we mentioned earlier, it really consumed him.
It did. There's this powerful image of him at an airport. He has this huge printout of the Citibank data, like a phone book. He knows he has to ditch it to avoid charges, but he struggles.
Why?
Because he also has floppy disks with him. And those disks represent thousands of hours of work. His 10-megabyte trophy of card data. It was his intellectual achievement, his proof of skill. Throwing away the printout was hard, but ditching the disks was agonizing.
Wow. And living like that. Constantly paranoid.
Yeah, spreading fake rumors about where he was, struggling to sleep, waking up disoriented. His mind was under constant siege.
And when he finally got caught, his ordeal wasn't over. Rikers Island sounds like a nightmare.
It was brutal. He wasn't put with white-collar criminals. He was jailed with genuinely dangerous criminals, including a serial killer nicknamed Kentucky. He faced threats, was physically attacked. It was a terrifying, reality-shattering experience.
And then the ultimate irony after he got out.
The ultimate irony. He tries to get legitimate work, and what does he hear? You don't have any computer skills?
To him, after everything he'd done.
Devastating. Shows the complete disconnect, how society just couldn't grasp or value the kind of skills he had, even if they were gained illicitly. A tragic coda to his story.
Okay, let's look at another pair. Phoenix and Electron. Very different personalities, right?
Complete opposites in many ways. Phoenix was social, maybe a bit boastful, really craved attention and external validation. Electron was the technical genius, incredibly skilled, but much more isolated, and carrying a lot of personal baggage.
Phoenix pulled off a really famous stunt, didn't he? Involving Cliff Stoll.
Oh yeah, the ultimate audacious prank. Cliff Stoll was already famous as an astronomer who had caught hackers, wrote the book The Cuckoo's Egg. Phoenix managed to get root access on Stoll's own machine.
No way. What did he do?
He changed the system's message of the day, the banner you see when you log in to read. It looks like the cuckoo's got egg on his face.
Coach, that's bold.
Incredibly bold, and it blew up. Made national news, New York Times, everything. It massively fed Phoenix's ego, made him want to take credit for other hacks too. But it also put a huge spotlight on the Australian scene, which wasn't necessarily good for anyone else.
Meanwhile, Electron was focused on the deeper technical challenges, less about the public stunts.
Entirely. Electron was driven by acquiring really sensitive, hardcore technical knowledge. His targets were things like the Zardoz bundles,
Zardoz, what was that?
described as like a giant keyring full of passkeys made to fit virtually every lock, basically master access credentials, and also DZIP, which were classified encryption algorithms. He was trying to get these from Purdue University from a system run by Gene Spafford, another big name in security.
So pure intellectual conquest,
Yeah.
getting the keys to the kingdom.
Exactly. The ultimate prize for that kind of hacker mentality was the knowledge itself, the access to forbidden tech.
But Electron's story has this really tragic personal dimension, too.
It really does. He'd lost his mother to cancer when he was young. Then, as a teenager, his father was diagnosed with terminal bowel cancer. Hacking became his escape, his obsession, a way to pour his intellect into something other than grief.
That's incredibly sad. And it took a toll on his mental health.
A severe toll. It eventually led to him being committed to a psychiatric ward. And the paranoia was intense. He apparently believed his father had set it all up, that his committal was orchestrated by his dying father. A complete break from reality, fueled by grief and pressure.
Just heartbreaking. And this is where Phoenix's bragging comes back in, with devastating consequences.
Phoenix started boasting in the underground that they had stolen $50,000 from Citibank. Electron knew this was totally false, just Phoenix puffing himself up.
But the claim itself was dangerous.
Extremely dangerous. Even though it was untrue, that kind of talk attracted the wrong kind of attention.
Yeah.
Specifically, the U.S. Secret Service. They heard these rumors, started investigating, put phone taps in place.
And that led to arrests.
It led to the whole group getting busted. Phoenix's ego, his need for fame built on lies, ultimately brought them all down. A classic cautionary tale. Loose lips sink ships, especially in the underground.
Our final story brings us to Anthrax, a master phreaker, fascinated by the phone system itself.
Yeah, Anthrax from rural Victoria. He wasn't just making free calls. He was obsessed with understanding the phone network, its hidden corners, how it all worked.
And his dedication was pretty intense, physically demanding even.
Unbelievably so. He used to do this thing called hand scanning. He'd go to payphones, often late at night, like 3 a.m., and manually dial sequences using a rotary dial, listening for special tones, mapping out the system.
With a rotary dial? Manually.
Yes. Painstaking work. The sources say he'd get blisters on the tips of his fingers from doing it for hours. That's dedication. It wasn't just about free access. It was about deeply knowing the system.
And he was known for some legendary pranks, too, using his skills for mischief.
Oh, legendary is the word.
Yeah.
He once called an ice cream parlor, the Blue Ribbon Ice Cream Parlor, pretending to be a police dispatcher reporting an officer in need of assistance nearby, caused a full police mobilization, cops rushing around looking for an injured officer who didn't exist.
That disruptive.
Highly disruptive. Then there was his long-running Mr. McKenney gag. He just picked a random person and prank called them relentlessly over time. The culmination was a call reporting a body in the bathtub at McKenney's address.
Good grief. That must have terrified the poor guy.
Absolutely. These weren't just simple pranks. They were elaborate performances using the phone network as his stage, showed his technical skill and a very dark sense of humor.
And like Electron, Anthrax had a difficult background that seemed to shape him.
Very much so. He faced racism growing up in a rough country town, had a violent father, struggled with a stutter. These experiences fueled a real rebellious streak, a questioning of authority.
And this led him towards Islam.
Yes, eventually he converted. He found deep veins of truth, particularly in the Nation of Islam's teachings. It seemed to connect his personal struggles against injustice to a larger framework, giving him a sense of purpose and community he hadn't found before.
So what was his ultimate driving force? Beyond the rebellion, beyond the pranks.
He stated it very clearly himself. My first and foremost motivation is to learn. He valued real-life experimentation with systems over just reading books or going to university. The real satisfaction was gaining that inside knowledge, figuring things out for himself.
The pure intellectual thrill again.
Exactly. For some, like Anthrax, it seems that was the core motivation that transcended everything else.
Law, lies, and the evolution of the cyber threat.
So as all this activity started hitting the mainstream, the legal system was playing catch-up, Big time. Judges were really grappling with applying existing laws to novel cybercrimes. The rulebook just wasn't written for this stuff yet.
A lot of gray areas.
Huge gray areas. And it led to inconsistency. You had some judges, like a Judge Kim mentioned in the sources, who showed surprising insight. Kim recognized that sometimes traditional deterrence had little relevance at the point of collision between hacking and mental illness.
Acknowledging the psychological factors we saw in Lecron's case, for instance.
Exactly. Recognizing that simply punishing might not be the right or effective approach when dealing with complex mental health issues intertwined with these activities.
And this struggle was reflected in sentencing too, right? Big differences depending on where you were.
Absolutely. In Australia, many early cases ended with things like community service or good behavior bonds. Relatively lenient, you might say. But then you look elsewhere, like the UK, and people were getting serious prison time for similar things.
So, a global patchwork of responses. No real consensus.
Not at all. Just shows how uncertain everyone was, how experimental cyber law was in those early days. No clear precedents to follow.
And fueling all this, or maybe confusing it, was the media. How did media reporting shape how people saw hackers?
The media played a massive role, often not helpful one. Reporting was full of exaggerated claims and pure sensationalism. You'd see headlines screaming, "Citibank hackers score $500,000," when the reality was often much less dramatic or completely unproven.
Creating this image of easy digital fortunes.
Precisely. And this hacker hype, as the sources call it, was actively used by some people. Figures like Stuart Gill, a security consultant, used the fear generated by these headlines to push for tougher laws.
Capitalizing on the panic.
Pretty much, using public fear, fueled by often inaccurate reporting, to drive policy rather than relying on nuanced understanding. It's a pattern we still see.
It wasn't just exaggeration, though. The media often painted hackers with a very broad negative brush. The demonization factor.
Definitely. Hackers were frequently portrayed simply as criminals or subversives. Take the example of Wandy. The media depicted him as a computer-literate hooligan out to pillage the world's databases.
It's pure evil, no nuance.
Exactly. This kind of portrayal stoked public fear, made it harder to have a sensible discussion about motivations, about the difference between exploration and actual malice. Fear drove the narrative, not facts. Now, the interesting thing is, if the goal of cracking down was to stop hacking, well, it didn't really work like that. It didn't eliminate it. What it did do was push it deeper underground. And ironically, it forced the remaining hackers to get much smarter, much stealthier.
Adversity being the mother of invention.
That's exactly the phrase used in the sources. The pressure inadvertently spurred this new wave of sophistication. Hackers had to evolve to survive, becoming more sophisticated than ever before, harder to catch, not easier.
And we see this evolution clearly in the techniques they started using. What were the big shifts? Well, first, encryption became standard practice, ubiquitous. Today, top hackers encrypt everything sensitive. We're talking hard drives, live data connections, even voice calls.
Making surveillance and forensics way harder.
Exponentially harder. It's about hiding at every layer. Second, the really elite hackers shifted towards source code exploitation.
Meaning?
Instead of just looking for known bugs, they started reading line by line through the proprietary source code of major tech companies, DEC, HP, Cisco, Sun, Microsoft, looking for brand new, undiscovered vulnerabilities. 0 days.
Requires a much deeper level of skill.
Absolutely. A fundamental understanding of how the systems are built. And third, maybe the most insidious development, backdooring.
Installing hidden entrances.
Exactly. It became this highly sensitive objective, installing their own secret backdoors into software before it was even released to the public. Think major web browsers, popular games, network filters, even databases used by law enforcement.
Whoa. A hidden vulnerability baked in from the start. That's deeply concerning.
It's a strategic long game, totally bypassing normal security.
And reflecting that darker, more cynical shift, there's this trend of targeting other hackers.
Why would they do that? Doesn't that break the code completely?
The old code, yes. The rationale now is brutal. What are the other hackers going to do? Call the feds. It shows how fragmented and distrustful the scene became. A dog-eat-dog world where even former allies could be targets. That original community spirit, gone.
This must have also driven more people to work alone, right? To minimize risk.
Definitely. You see the rise of the solitary hacker, someone like Schemo mentioned in the sources. His philosophy was stark. There is more risk if two people know than if one does. about a vulnerability or an operation.
Ultimate operational security through isolation.
Precisely. He was focused on getting cellular network keys, trying to become completely mobile, untraceable, operating outside traditional networks altogether. It shows this commitment to extreme self, born out of extreme paranoia and self-reliance. Trust was a liability. Outro.
So wrapping this all up, where does this journey leave us today? We've gone from these almost quaint BBSs with their golden rules to this world of super sophisticated, often lone wolf operators using encryption, finding 0 days, planting backdoors. It's a wild evolution.
It really is. And it's a testament to human ingenuity, isn't it? Though whether that ingenuity is used for good or ill is, well, the million-dollar question. It constantly challenges our legal and ethical frameworks.
And it brings us back to that fundamental question the authors raise, which feels just as relevant now. How should we actually categorize this stuff? Does it make sense to view most look-see hackers as criminals?
Yeah, hackers who just explore, don't damage, don't commit fraud. The book argues probably not. They are primarily just a nuisance and should be treated as such. But that's often miles away from how the law treats even minor intrusions today.
Right, current laws sometimes equate that look-see activity with really serious crimes. There's a disconnect between intent and consequence in the legal view.
A huge disconnect often. The nuances get lost.
And yet, despite all the changes in tech and law, those core motivations we talked about, they seem to persist, don't they?
They really do. That intellectual challenge, the pure thrill of discovery, wanting recognition from peers, sometimes that deep-seated rebellious streak, wanting to expose flaws. Those drives seem constant, running through decades of digital change.
Which leads us to our final thought for you, the listener. Something to chew on. If cracking down hard on elite hackers just makes them better, smarter, forces them deeper underground to invent even more powerful, undetectable tools, what's the real long-term cost of how we approach cybersecurity now? Are we actually winning this cyber war, or are we just caught in an endless cycle of escalation, constantly pushing the advantage towards those who operate best in the shadows?